With opening day for the 2024 MLB season just a few days away, we are going to simulate the entire season in MLB the Show 24 and see what the game predicts will happen for this upcoming Major League season. We're going to take a look at how all the teams do, how some of the top players perform, and of course, who ends up winning the World Series. We're going to use the rosters with injuries to try to keep things a little bit realistic, although knowing this game, realism is going to be out the window in about 5 minutes. We're going to use the Detroit Tigers, my favorite team, although it doesn't really matter who we use because everything's going to be set to automatic anyway. That includes trades, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have some wacky ones because MLB the Show never ceases to fail us with that. So as you can see here in the roster, all the injuries are up to date. Mostly a lot of pitchers who are currently undergoing Tommy John or some form of elbow recovery. So we're going to start by simulating into the All-Star break and taking a look at where the Major League season stands here in the middle of July. It looks like the Tigers are not doing too hot, unfortunately. We'll start in the American League East. Everybody is over 500. It's a 6-game separation between first and last. Really, anybody can still win this division with the Rays at the top, followed by Toronto. The AL Central's the total opposite. Minnesota's already got 60 wins, and everybody else here stinks. The AL West is kind of interesting because you've got the Astros in first, which makes sense. And then the Angels are in second. Who would have thought? They're ahead of the Rangers, who have lost 9 in a row, and the Mariners, who I think are a big sleeper in real life. And the Angels are currently a wild card team. Now, knowing the Angels, they're going to completely blow it in the second half like they do every year. But still, good for them. Number 1 wild card in the American League at the All-Star break. As for the NL, it's a 2-horse fight in the NL East between, as you would expect, the Braves and the Phillies. I'm most surprised by the fact that the Mets have been so bad, and even the Nationals as well. I would think they would be doing better than that. The NL Central is one of the divisions of all time. The Cardinals have a clear edge here, although the Cubs, Pirates, and Brewers are very much alive in the wild card race. And then out west, it's the Dodgers world, and we're just living in it. The Diamondbacks have been really good, but everybody else not so much. The Giants and Padres have both been surprisingly poor, and the wild card race only goes about 5 teams deep. Doesn't seem like there's much competition below the Brewers for a wild card spot in the NL. Let's briefly go through the All-Star festivities. That will start off with the Home Run Derby in Texas. Here are our 8 competitors. No major surprises. Guys who you would expect to see performing in the Home Run Derby. I think the most interesting thing in this group is that Kyle Schwarber is hitting like 260. If Schwarber hits 260 and leads the league in home runs, does he need to enter the MVP conversation? I think the answer is probably yes. As for the winner at the Home Run Derby, it ends up being third baseman Jake Burger of the Miami Marlins. So Burger and his big power righty bat ends up taking it over Yordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros. Let's take a look at the All-Star team. This should be quite interesting. The first thing I notice is that there's a lot of Astros here, including Christian Javier, the starting pitcher of the American League team, and he's joined by some faces you would expect. Garrett Cole, Corbin Burns, George Kirby, and Alek Manoah, who completely rebounded after his horrible season last year. He ends up grabbing an All-Star spot. Good for him. Here's a look at the relievers going into the All-Star game. Behind the plate, Adley Rutschman and Salvador Perez both make it along with Tyler Soderstrom at first base. Andrew Vaughn is a little bit of a surprise, but the former top pick has had a great year. Vaughn Grissom makes it for the Red Sox. No Rafael Devers, though. Corey Seager's having an unbelievable year, as is Jeremy Pena. He's hitting like 320. And then in the outfield, Mike Trout is doing his thing. Look at Giancarlo Stanton turning back the clock. 21 home runs for Stanton while hitting above 250. As for the National League, surprises pitching-wise include Ranger Suarez and Mitch Keller. A couple of young guys finally getting over the hump. Here's a look at the bullpen. Couple of Giants here with Tristan Beck and Camilo Duvall. As for the position players, youngsters like Francisco Alvarez and Keibert Ruiz get in. Vinny Pasquantino is now with the Cubs, and he ends up being an all-star. Brendan Rodgers barely hitting above the Mendoza line. He gets on the list for Lord knows what reason. Ellie De La Cruz hasn't been all that good, but he still finds a spot in the All-Star game. There's Kyle Schwarber hitting 262. Who would have thought? And then rounding things out with the usual suspects of Carroll and Acuna. As for the awards, the favorite in the AL is Mike Trout. Understandable. He's currently carrying the Angels to a playoff spot. And then Kyle Schwarber, as I kind of suspected, in the National League. Cy Young-wise, we have Colby Allard in second. Okay, who would have thought? As for the Rookie of the Year, Evan Carter leads the way in the American League, while Marco Luciano holds on to the lead in the National League. Let's make it to the trade deadline now, because MLB The Show never ceases to amaze me with some of their weird trades. This season was no different. We had some interesting ones. Nathaniel Lowe traded to the Red Sox for Liam Hendricks, who's old and injured. Here's a wild one. O'Neal Cruz to the Marlins for Trevor Rogers. Andrew Chafin to the Guardians for Gabriel Arias. Denny Pasquantino for Pete Crow Armstrong. No wonder the Royals gave him away. The Oakland A's are kind of cooking a little bit. They trade Shea Langoliers to the Phillies for Andrew Painter, and then they swipe Abner Uribe away from the Brewers just for Aledmys Diaz. There weren't as many notable trades later as we got closer to the trade deadline, oddly enough. The most fascinating one here would be Walker Jenkins, one of the top prospects in baseball, to the division rival Guardians for Stephen Kwan. And then the Yankees trade away Luis Gil to the Rockies for David Fry, while the Phillies acquire Brenton Doyle. Let's simulate to the end of the season. No playoffs, unfortunately, for the Tigers, who go 67-95. The Rays end up winning the AL East, with the Blue Jays and Yankees getting playoff spots, and the Orioles, after going 9-1 in their last 10, barely miss out. In the AL Central, it's the Twins and only the Twins, while in the West, the Astros win the division, and the Angels hold on to the wild card spot. I thought they were going to collapse like they do every year, but not quite. The Angels are going to the playoffs. The Braves win the NL East, Phillies grab a wild card spot. I can't see the Mets winning 67 games, and I also can't see the Nationals winning 62. Both of those totals look awfully low. The NL Central was actually quite good this year. The Cardinals went 95-67. Cubs got a wild card spot. Brewers and Pirates also competitive. The Dodgers, meanwhile, won 106 games. And Arizona, the reigning National League champions, are back in the playoffs as well as a wild card. As for the stat leaders across all of baseball, in the American League, Juan Soto hit 346. Bo Bichette led the way in hits. Home runs and RBIs ended up going to Mike Trout. Giancarlo Stanton with 44 home runs, turning back the clock like it's 2017. Juan Soto leads in OPS with 4 guys finishing over 1,000. If you were to tell me 4 players in the American League would finish with an OPS above 1,000, I probably would end up guessing those 4. Very predictable group. Corbin Burns leads the way in wins. Chris Martin with 50 saves. George Kirby leads in ERA. Garrett Cole leads in whip and pitching WAR, while Mike Trout finishes with a 9.8 WAR, barely edging out Corey Seager at the top. As for the National League, Corbin Carroll ends up taking home the batting title. He also leads the league in hits. As for at-bats, it goes to Shohei Ohtani, interestingly. Corbin Carroll leads in both doubles and triples. Home runs goes to Mookie Betts and Kyle Schwarber. Schwarber didn't end up hitting 264. His average went up after the break. RBIs ended up going to Shohei Ohtani. OPS, the only one with over 1,000, ended up being Corbin Carroll. As for pitching, wins was Spencer Strider and Shohei Ohtani, who apparently ended up pitching the entire season. I guess he just magically somehow recovered from Tommy John surgery within the span of 5 months. Either he's a cyborg or he pitched the entire season with his left arm. Both of which is more likely than him ever getting suspended by the MLB for gambling. So quite the season for Ohtani. Spencer Strider also led the way in terms of the least amount of losses. Not that win-loss really matters all that much for pitchers in the modern day, but still pretty cool, I guess. Devin Williams with 54 saves leads the way there. Zach Gallen had the lowest ERA, barely above 2. Whip leader ended up also being Zach Gallen of the Diamondbacks, the only one below 1 at .95. The pitching WAR leader in the National League ended up being Spencer Strider, who takes the cake over Zach Gallen, while the batting WAR leader was Corbin Carroll at 8.5. As for the awards, Mike Trout wins the MVP in the AL. Very well deserved, his 4th of his career, carrying the Angels to a playoff spot with one of his best seasons of his career, which says something because, well, it's Mike Trout. Spencer Strider ends up winning it in the NL. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I mean, as long as Ohtani's doing his two-way stuff, it should probably be him. I thought it was going to be Corbin Carroll, though, with the year he had. You can't fault the game for picking Strider because he was fantastic, and he definitely deserves the Cy Young, but I would have thought it would have been Ohtani or Carroll above him. While Strider takes the Cy Young in the National League, it ends up going to Corbin Carroll in the American League, beating out AL East rivals Garrett Cole and Kevin Gausman. Evan Carter does win the Rookie of the Year in the AL, while Jordan Wicks at the Cubs ends up taking it in the NL. All right, now it's time for the moment of truth. It's playoff time. We're going to start by simulating through the wild card round. Should be interesting to see the results here, and as you can see, Mike Trout still has 0 career playoff wins as the Angels get swept by Toronto. The Yankees end up sweeping Minnesota, showing how strong the AL Central is. The Phillies get revenge on the Diamondbacks, and then the Cardinals beat their division rival Cubs, both of which were in 3 games. As for the AL and NLDSs, we've got the Astros and the Rays going up against each other in the ALCS. They knock out Toronto and the Yankees. In the NL, the Phillies end up getting swept by the Dodgers. That, to me, is a surprise because, well, the Dodgers play their worst baseball in October while the Phillies play the best. Last season's iteration of this video, the Dodgers lost in the NLDS, which ended up being completely right, as they did in real life. So maybe this will end up being some good fortune for the Dodgers. They'll go up against the Cardinals in the NLCS, as the Braves lose in the NLDS for a 3rd consecutive season. In the World Series, we've got the Astros, who sweep the Rays, and the Cardinals, who beat the Dodgers in 7. Interestingly, the home team in the NLCS ended up going 0-7. The road team won every time. So our World Series ends up being the Astros, as we kind of would have expected. They make it back again. And they'll be going up against the St. Louis Cardinals, coming off a season where they finished, I'm pretty sure, dead last in the NL Central. The Astros roster looks similar, as you would expect. Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, Jose Altuve, etc. As for the Cardinals, interestingly, they added Blake Snell. These were the rosters before Blake Snell signed with the Giants, so the Cardinals were lucky to add another pitcher to their staff, and one who isn't 60 years old, unlike the rest of their group. Nolan Arenado, by the way, has 8 home runs and is hitting .345 in the playoffs, while Tommy Edman is hitting .362. These guys are on fire. So let's simulate the 2024 World Series, see who ends up winning it all as the Astros take Game 1. Cardinals take one on the road, though. We're not up at 1, going into 3 big games in St. Louis as the Astros win Game 2, and Game 3, and Game 4. So the Astros win the World Series. A little anticlimactic there, but Houston gets ring number 3 for their dynasty. Yordan Alvarez and Nolan Arenado in the postseason MVPs. Arenado finishes with 10 home runs. I'm pretty sure that passes Randy Arozarena for the most in a postseason ever, while Yordan Alvarez takes home the World Series MVP. So there you go. That's what MLB The Show predicts will happen for the 2024 season. Let me know what you agree with and disagree with down below in the comments. Hopefully we can come back to this video at the end of the season and laugh at how horribly it's aged. Otherwise, I'm going to be a sad Tiger fan that we only won 67 games. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.